Testing business continuity planning. Testing a business continuity plan ensures that this plan is complete. We've thought of everything we need to. It's realistic. It's feasible. Could we actually meet the objectives that are listed in the plan? Can we recover as we've sort of promised we would? Would we be able to meet the timelines for recovery? Our recovery time objective, and even for our data, our recovery point objective. Are people then familiar with it? Do people know the plan so that if there was to be a crisis, everybody knows their role? They know what they are supposed to do. And one of the great benefits of conducting a test is that it helps people to become familiar and know how their role fits within the functions of other people on the team as well. A plan, in order to be trusted, must be tested. However, we want to do the tests at a time that are going to have a minimal impact on business. Try to schedule the test during a period of low activity so we can prevent some type of service disruption. It's also very often difficult to get a business continuity plan right the first time. It often needs a whole series of, should we say, improvements and enhancements to the plan before it really is robust and can be effective in a crisis. So it's important to start small. Conduct tests that are fairly straightforward, and then once we have some of the basics covered, then increase the complexity of the tests as well. It's important to test all aspects of the plan. The area that has not been tested almost inevitably will be the area in which we have the crisis. So it's important there that we thoroughly test all the parts of the plan and all the personnel involved. It's important to measure. Certainly, when we conduct a test, we should have ways to determine, was this test a success or a failure? What was the degree of success? What is the maturity of the plan? And what are some of the things we need to do to show that the plan is getting better from one test to the next? But of course, it's no good to do a test and then not to make the improvements that the test actually indicated. We should follow up on the test results to make sure that anything that was identified during the test is actually fixed, so that the next time we conduct a test, we won't just find the same problems again. There are a number of different types of tests that we can conduct, and the simplest and easiest is a simple desk-based evaluation. A desk-based evaluation is to give a person a copy of the plan, have them read through it, and ensure that it's up to date and current for their department. Is their department, we can say, able to ensure that the areas that were critical in the plan have been addressed, that there haven't been changes in personnel, changes in systems, changes in priorities that the plan has not yet noticed. This should be done at least once a year, where we have then each manager review that part of the plan for their department. The business continuity planning coordinator should ensure that this is being done and coordinate then the gathering of all these evaluations from the various managers. Once we know that the plan is complete and up to date, we can schedule a structured walkthrough, sometimes called a tabletop exercise. The idea of a structured walkthrough is we actually then get our key people together in a conference room and we step through the plan as if there was a crisis. We get then a call saying, we're having this problem. Now everybody has to open their plan to the correct place. They list and describe their responsibilities. The advantage, of course, of doing this is everybody hears how their role fits into the role then of others. If there's something that gets noticed, it's easy then to record that so that can be then fixed before the next test. We can also do preparedness tests and simulations where we check, for example, a vendor. We check our processes to make sure that we are ready. That, for example, if we need spare parts, if we need backup data, that that backup data is truly available. It has been tested and it's found to, of course, be complete and certainly retrievable within a reasonable time period. We often will do a simulation, such as to pull the fire alarm and make sure that people know how to evacuate the building rapidly, but also, of course, safely. One of the most dangerous tests to do is a fully operational test. A full operational test is where we're actually going to, in many cases, cause an outage. So we make sure that our alternate process does work. For example, myself, having come out of a telco background, we had to do one of these tests every year. We had to turn off all commercial power to our telephone buildings and prove that the entire phone system could run that day with its batteries and with diesels. And that was always a nervous day. Because of the hundreds of sites we had, we knew that at a few of them, the diesels just wouldn't start. In spite of the fact that these had been tested every month, there'd been an extra test the week before the full operational test, we still knew that on the day of the test, a few of our generators would just be ornery, they wouldn't start, and we'd then have to get one of our portable generators out to that site before we actually saw an impact on service. One of the realities is in our fast-changing world is that by the time we have the ink dry on the paper, the plan is already out of date. We need to be able to keep the plan up to date with changes in business priorities, changes in technology. A very good example of this, when I first started working in the area of business continuity planning, the number one service for recovery was usually the voice telecommunication system. Then over a few years that changed. The number one recovery was going to be email because that's how we communicated most effectively. Today, for many organizations, their first priority of recovery is going to be their web services because that's how we interface with our customers and even often our employees. So we see there's been changes in technology, and it's important that my plan reflects those changes. We could have had a product or service that used to be our number one product. Today, that's really at end of life. And it would be wrong for my plan to still recover that end of life system rather than the one that is coming along as our new important system. The other thing, of course, is people move around. The people from a department that could help us with the business continuity planning and help us in a disaster quite simply have moved to another department. So we have to keep training new people. We have to make sure that for every key person, they also have a deputy that fill in when they're not there. Now also, the plan will need to be updated as a result of anything we've learned. For example, we might have had an incident, and from that, I like to say that every incident contains flakes of gold within the mountain of rock. Our challenge when we're dealing with an incident to get a feedback and to really check what can we learn to help us better prepare, help us to prevent an incident in the future, be better at detecting the incident, and of course better at recovery. So all of these are some of the real advantages of really examining ourselves. We might have had an audit, we might have had an incident, and any of these can help us then have the information we need to then recover and build a better, shall we say, business continuity plan. So what is our role as audit? Well, hopefully we're not the business continuity planning coordinator. We can leave that to somebody else. But we have to make sure that these plans are realistic. The organization is counting on these in a crisis. And business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning can easily become a never-ending project that never really delivers anything of value. As an auditor, we should ensure that the plans would work, that there's been adequate support, and that they will adequately support the organization's essential business operations. Obviously then, as an auditor, we have to validate Have we identified really the essential business operations? Do we have a plan that would help us to support those business operations regardless of the length of then the disruption? We'll also review how the BCP is prepared. Was the business impact analysis done thoroughly, completely? And is the information we have from the business impact analysis accurate? We don't have to review how the information is gathered, whether it's a facilitated workshop or a questionnaire. The important thing is, did we get the right information during then the BIA process? So what are some of the areas that we would then specifically look at when we're going to conduct an audit of business continuity planning? We'd check to see whether or not the plan is being tested on a regular basis. What types of tests are they doing? Are they learning and applying the lessons from those tests? Are they making sure that all the people are trained? We look at the results of prior tests to see whether or not the maturity of our process is getting better, and have we applied the lessons we learned from a previous test effectively. We also test to make sure the backups will work. If we lose a file, that's an inconvenience. But if we lose a file and find out that our backup was corrupt, then we've got a crisis. So we want to ensure, number one, the security of our backups so that they will be available when they're needed, but only to authorized people. But also make sure those backups themselves will bring them back from maybe an offsite location. We'll validate that we can read them. And these are important steps, obviously, to provide assurance to management that if there was a crisis, we would be able to recover our data within the recovery point objective. We should also talk to key personnel. Try to get a sense of whether or not they support the plan, or is it such that if we had a crisis, they would be unable to really commit themselves. They didn't believe in the plan. Well, why? These are some things that we need to certainly gather information, because we can have a wonderful plan, but if my people aren't going to support and implement it, then that plan simply becomes nothing but paper. We should also look at, well, the security, not only of where we keep our offsite backups, but also the security and availability of our alternate location. If we have to relocate to another alternate location, we want to make sure that that space is available. We want to make sure it's secure and it's being properly maintained. We don't want to have a large crisis, as we saw in the eastern seaboard of the United States a few years ago, where several companies went to their hot site and said, "Here we come," but the hot site had to tell them, "We're already full. We don't have room for you." And in many cases, they were full because of an event that had happened actually more than a month earlier. So the problem is that the companies relying on that hot site had not been checking to make sure that, well, we call it preparedness test before, that that hot site would be available if we had a crisis. As auditors, we can also check insurance coverage. Is the insurance coverage adequate? Do we have enough of it? And have we made sure we're compliant so that if there had to be a payout, it's more likely that we actually would receive it? Some of the key areas we covered now in this course. We talked about the importance of aligning IT strategy with organizational strategy. As auditors, we have to make sure that what's being done within the IT department reflects the priorities and strategic values of management. We want to ensure that we build a robust and complete IT program that spans the entire enterprise. It's good to have secure systems, but in the end, all of those systems should work together. Good IT governance brings then a common picture and a common framework so that every system fits well together, communicates, they're interoperable, and certainly they're repeatable, so we don't have to reinvent our security solutions with every single system or project. We want to ensure that the risk management has been conducted, that any types of risks have been identified, And certainly from the perspective of risk management, have we put in adequate controls? We want to make sure that our IT systems are protected against the various types of attacks they will undoubtedly face. We'll also have evaluated IT management. Are they doing their job? Are they using the budget and resources they have effectively? From the perspective of IT management, we want to make sure that they also have understood the priorities for the operation of the business. And what's the most important priority? That is to support business operations. Finally, we've taken a look here at business continuity management. And it's important that we understand the resilience necessary so that if something does go wrong, we will be able to recover our critical business processes. We will be able to ensure, hopefully, the very survivability of our organization.